Then ride with me in my foul life.
Foul Life Podcast is back at you. We're so excited for today's episode because we get to talk shooting, we get to talk guns, we get to talk sights, seeing better. How do you become a better shotgunner? Today's episode of the podcast is brought to you by our friends out of the great state of Wyoming, HIVIZ Sights Light Pipe Technology. I don't know how many years exactly we have been using the product. I know we've been partnered with HIVIZ for almost one complete decade now, and all I can say is that I truly and completely believe in what they've done for myself personally as a shotgunner, and I shoot a shotgun almost every day of my life, and I can tell you that in any lighting condition, it has upped my success rate and, more importantly, my confidence in picking out my target, squeezing the trigger, and then transitioning from my first target to my second target and so forth. We're going to get into that today. Today, I'm humbled to have the founder of HIVIZ, Phil Howe. I've known this man for about a decade. He was one of the first people that believed in what we were doing at the Foul Life. He was still actually based out of Fort Collins, Colorado at that time, and now they've made the transition into the state of Wyoming, into the city and town of Laramie. Mr. Phil, how are you?
Very good. How are you, Chad?
I'm doing good, buddy. It's cold here, but from what sounds like the neck of the woods you're hailing from right now, it's really cold up there.
Yep, we got an Arctic blast that came through, and I think it started up Sunday, and temperatures dropped, but we'll take it with the fires that we have here in Colorado. It will help get a handle on that.
So the fires have been through Colorado and partly into that part of Wyoming, and the snowfall and the precipitation has helped get a handle on it?
Yes.
And do you experience in that part of the country, if it snows in a place like Nashville, Tennessee was my last place, where they're not used to snow, and then all of a sudden the drivers have to experience that? Being around where you're at right now, people are more accustomed. They don't really get too nervous when they have to drive in those conditions, right?
Oh, no. It's pretty normal here.
Is it, how many inches fell this time?
I think it was about 8 to 10 inches that we got. It was kind of hard to gauge because it was blizzard conditions, so we had quite a bit of wind going as well.
And when you think about those kind of weather conditions, is it kind of a hard thing to have in that area with all the ranching and all of the different types of farming and ranching going on, all of the livestock? When it gets that cold, it's got to get tough for everything. And even in that area, what happens? You have a lot of friends that are ranchers and cattle ranchers and growing livestock. Do they have to take this into consideration, that when it gets this cold, you're saying negative 20, 30 degrees with the wind chill?
Yes. Yeah, hopefully, they're able to get their cattle around some kind of windbreak, or a lot of cases that doesn't happen. So you really feel for the livestock, when we get those kind of weather conditions.
Do you think that being in that area has kept you more focused because you're inside more with those kind of temperatures, Mr. Phil, to where now you can, like, everything, you don't really feel the niche? There's no way you want to go outside when it's like that. So I assume that business is a little bit more focused on when it's that cold.
Well, we don't get that all the time. Typically December, January, we get our Arctic blast where you get the sub-zero temperatures, but other than that, it's really not too bad if you're outdoors, type like cross country, downhill, snowmobile. There's a lot of opportunity in the area if you like getting out and doing any of those things. It definitely helps shorten the winter, if you will.
Yeah, 100%. I love that area. The last thing I would say about that area, there was a song written I don't remember how many years ago. It's been performed by several different artists. Mickey and the Motor Cars is the one that I remember the most, my favorite version. But there's a song out there called Rock Springs to Cheyenne. And that stretch of Interstate 80 through that part of Wyoming, Rawlins and Green River and Evanston's a little bit before Rock Springs, but all the way from Rock Springs all the way to the Colorado border, Cheyenne, that part where you start getting into Colorado, Nebraska, it's been hailed as it can be hectic driving. The big rigs, the 18-wheelers, the whiteouts, the black ice, the high winds. I mean, I've been in Rawlins, Wyoming, Mr. Field, where my it's nothing for my side mirrors to get bent in on my truck. Like if you want to face every element of bad weather, you get on that stretch of highway.
Oh, it's definitely a tough stretch of road. I would say over the course of the winter, you probably will see 12, 15 closures due to wind, as you say, ice. But yeah, it's a pretty much wide open, so there's really nothing to protect you.
Mr. Field, a lot of good business ideas and products and development of these products come out of necessity. They come out of somebody saying, well, this could be done better. Or an example that I use is a partner that we work with in Texas. Dad's out in his pickup truck on the around the cattle, runs into one of the longhorns and it just smashes the front end of his truck. So they go into the shop. The son starts building and welding and fabricating a bumper that turns into a national bumper company. And it came out of necessity just so they would quit ruining the front ends of their trucks when something like this would happen in Texas. What was that kind of your mindset back in the day? I want to go back to, why wasn't it suffice just to have the sights that a gun owner would experience when he or she opened that box or took that gun off the shelf at their retail sporting goods store?
Well, what started, I guess, me down this road prior to starting HIVIZ, I worked product development, developing livestock products. And I met a gentleman. He was showing me this concept, and it was a good concept. Definitely caught my attention. It was different from, as you say, the average standard sight. And so we met and talked, and that's where it got going. And I could see the benefits of a fiber optic sight and how that would help in the case of a shotgunner. Basically, I saw it, and I saw it as a good idea, and we just took it to the next step and then the next step. And that would have been in 1995, excuse me. And we had the product put together and launched in 1996.
So you're looking at going on, 25 years of business. The vision, you say it was a good idea, but what was the idea? Like, what sold you on the fact that, well, when you pull this shotgun up, this is what you're seeing on this factory site or this bead? What was it that told you, well, the human eye is going to be more apt to this idea of having to spend more money now for an aftermarket item to put on that shotgun, which happens every day in our industry. We don't cut corners as hunters. I know the ability and the confidence that HIVIZ, like I stated earlier, gives me. But what were you seeing in those early days of like, man, this is really a good idea, because why?
Well, as you know, with a shotgun, you focus totally on your target. And what I saw early on with this, by increasing the brightness or making the sight easier to see, it allowed you to actually focus on your target more. And that has been proven, I think, over time. It does help you. Instead of your eyes jumping back and forth from your target to your barrel, it allows you to stay focused because your peripheral does see that bright sight.
So does that mindset cross over into what you would later on get into with the handguns and all of the different sights? And there's so many different sights now available for handguns and for shotguns and different applications of these sights, different color light pipes. Was the original one green? And how long after you started in on the endeavor was it that where, well, now that peripheral vision and picking up your target with a handgun can be altered and be magnified with this light pipe technology?
Right. As you know, handguns a little bit different in sighting, but by having it brighter, I think you're able, whether it's a shotgun or a handgun, it allows you to get on a target quicker. And
do you think that was the color based off of scientific research that color is easily or picked up by the eye a lot faster?
Actually, when we began, I always personally liked the green, but we had a green, a yellow, and orange, and it didn't take long to figure out most people trended toward the green very quickly.
And is there a reason why that? Was there studies done?
No studies, pretty much. When we got on the market, that just became the sight of choice or the color of choice for many shooters. I do know there are some folks that are colorblind, and it seems like the green has fared better. People will see it much better. But yeah, it's by far green has been the most popular.
So when I talk about the sights, some of the quotes that I hear are, oh yeah, early morning, that sun's coming up, it's shooting hours are just coming in on a duck hunt or a quail hunt or a pheasant hunt, cloudy day, low ceiling, darker skies, weather conditions are changing. Do these sights work on a sunny bluebird day, Mr. Phil? Has there been studies or research done by you and your team at HIVIZ over the years since 1995 that show that, hey, even on a bluebird day, you're going to pick this sight up better? It's almost given that if it's darker, a neon green color like on a bar sign is flashing, you see it when it's dark, as opposed to being in the daytime, it doesn't stand out as much as it does at nighttime or darker hours of the day. So is that taken into consideration, and should a person still rely on HIVIZ on a bluebird day?
Yes. The technology that we use, and the reason our site works so well outdoors, and that was part of the key backing up when we developed the product, coming up with a light pipe that would gather light, transmit it. And so we, from day one, developed the light pipe using injection molding. And there's a difference between that and the other fiber optics that you see on the market. And there is a reason that our light pipe will gather in the case of, say, early morning, as long as you have ambient light, even say in a gray sky, if you got a storm coming over and getting dark, that ambient light actually excites the light pipe and it'll turn on pretty much like a neon. And it's because we have no cladding around it and it's able to gather the light better.
You don't have any what around it?
Pardon?
You said you don't have any what around it? Cladding?
Cladding, yes.
Define that, please.
Cladding on the extruded fiber optic, they put what they call a cladding, and it works really well indoors. If you're in a building, that can work pretty well, but our technology with no cladding works better for, again, picking up ambient light.
Mainly outdoors.
Yes.
So when you start talking about the ambient light and the bluebird sky days, is your eye when you're talking about that color of that light pipe, now does that matter, or is it just a preference, or do you try to educate the end consumer or the potential customer of, okay, if it's bluebird, you might go with this color. If it's overcast, you might go with this color. If it's low light conditions in the morning, you might go with this color, because that tends to be a little bit more hazy and black. Then your low light overcast days are a little bit more gray. Then your bluebird is a little bit more bright, and the blues are there, and you see all the colors really. So does that matter when you're picking out the color?
It can. Background can make a difference. If you've got a lot of green background, you may want to change to a red. But, we find a lot of people, if green is a choice, they pretty much stay with it, or a red. But I've, years ago when I competed in sporting clays, there was times just psychologically, if I was struggling, I would change it from a green to a red light pipe just for mental. But typically, like I say, once they shoot with it, the sight they prefer, they usually stay with it. Okay,
so when you transition from the color of the light pipe to the length and the size, the diameter, the circumference, the overall footprint of that sight on your rib, on the end of your muzzle, there's a new sight out there that was the comp sight that has been released by HIVIZ, and it's a lot smaller than the Magna Hunter, the Bird Buster, the things that I've hunted with in the past, but I'm getting great results from it. Why are the Bird Buster and the Magna Hunter longer, a little bit thicker in diameter, and then you got this comp sight that's so much smaller and it's a little tiny sight compared to the other ones. Does the size of the sight matter?
Again, it's preference, choice. When we first introduced, by the way, the first products we introduced was the M300 and the 400, and then the plain barrel, and those had the longer, bigger diameter that you're referring to, and those were designed primarily for bird hunting. But we learned early on that a lot of target sporting clay, trap, skeet shooters were starting to shoot with it, and so that was kind of a learning curve. And that when we saw the target market kicking in, we designed a smaller diameter, and I don't want to say less intrusive, but smaller diameter. It was still bright, but what we found is the sporting clay, skeet, trap shooters preferred that one. But to this day, the bigger diameter, I would say, is more popular for bird.
Is that because people have not been educated on what the smaller one can do, or does it just go with the mentality that bigger is better when you're hunting? Because like I've made the transition almost every duck hunt now, Mr. Phil. I use a 20 gauge or a 28 gauge as opposed to a 12. Is it just because they think bigger is better, or is that just the most common, eyesight is that they're going to pick that one up better?
Well, I think there's a couple things going on. Your target shooters that compete, they can put 200 to 500 rounds a week, depending, but they have so much repetition. It's different from, I believe, your average bird hunter that, goes once a year. I think the bigger sight does help them. And again, locking on that target, it's easier to see. And so I think that's why you see the difference between the bird hunter and like I say, the target market, the preference. But I would say target, you definitely, with the repetition and so forth, the muscle memory, they do a whole lot more shooting, and so does that make sense to you? That I'm kind of struggling here looking for words, but I think repetition, when I was competing, I would probably 300 to 500 rounds a week. So everything was, I could replay it in my head, a shot across or outgo or incomer. And so the smaller sight, I think, defines your sight picture a little tighter, if you will.
So is it if I'm reading you right or an understanding, if you're 300 to 500 rounds a week as a competitive shooter, or just somebody on the sporting clay range or skeet or 5-stand or whatever, your muscle memory is taking over to where you just shoulder that gun and look down that rib and boom. If you're going as a weekend warrior duck hunting, maybe 2 days a week or 3 days a month, your muscle memory might not be there like that sporting clay shooter. So you're relying on that bigger visual to get you on target and keep you on target.
Exactly.
That's more plays into same as like when you're shooting ducks with a 20 gauge as opposed to a 12 gauge. If you do it a lot more, you're going to start to find out, your leads and your swing and the different shot sizes and what they're going to be able to do, as opposed to shooting a 20 gauge 500 times a week on a sporting clay range. You're going to just throw it up and know exactly what that pattern is going to do out of that choke tube with that sight on it, with obviously paired with whatever ammo you're shooting and whatever it's being pushed of, as far as the shot size goes and how hot that round is. I completely understand that. It makes sense to me that now when I think back about, I duck hunt and shoot so much that I am geared towards that comp site now, just because it takes up less room on my gun. Aesthetically, it helps me more to where when I look down that barrel, it almost gets me focused more on my target, to where I'm relying now on what I've learned on how to shoot a shotgun, and I almost don't rely on the sight as much, even though it's there and I'm picking it up. It's almost like it's just part of the gun again, where that bigger sight is a little bit more of too big of a footprint sometimes.
Exactly. Yeah. And when you first put it on, especially the bigger sight, bigger diameter, longer, it's so bright, people find themselves looking at it, and I just tell them, just go shoot, don't look at the sight, and let the sight work for you. And the longer it's on there, the less you're looking at it. But at first, a new shooter will notice that sight for a while until they get to shooting. And but like I say, the best advice is, focus on the target. Do not stare at the sight. So
now, as far as we keep saying target, but when you start talking about targets and you start talking about doubles and triples, to me, it makes perfect sense on how transitioning is elevated with the light pipe technology, because once you're on that rib and you're on that target, now you have that sight, and now you just have to cover up that next target with it as you transition. Do you think that is just as important to your everyday consumer and the people that are repping HIVIZ, the professionals, as it is to just picking up that first target?
Oh, absolutely. Yes. Totally agree with that. Yes.
And do you think that as far as transitioning goes from target to target, how do you tell people that HIVIZ and light pipe technology will help that? Because that's a big thing in hunting, is knowing when to transition to the next target and being confident to pull that trigger again.
Well, I'm not an instructor, but I do know, like I said earlier, I do know our sites do help get on a target quicker. And that's one thing you will see with a new shooter. One thing they notice when they have shot our product for the first time, they get on the target much quicker. And that's, again, because they're seeing their eyes locked on their target. They're getting on the target quicker, peripheral, seeing where the target barrel relation or where the barrel is. So there's no eyes jumping back and forth between the target and the barrel. It helps you stay locked, and that's why you're able to get on targets, I think, quicker.
See, that makes total sense. There's no jumping back and forth. Right. So you're able to, that's why transitioning is so much smoother for me, because that's what I pride myself in is, going from ethical shot to the next ethical shot and having confidence before you pull that trigger, because it's a big responsibility to aim a gun at a living creature, a living animal, and take its life. You don't want to wound it. You don't want to cripple it. You don't want to put it through any kind of suffering at all. And I think that the HIVIZ, what we're talking about with the technology and the belief and the ideology that goes into it is just that you are getting on that target the way that you're intended to do it. And the light pipe is helping you transition to the next one, because every duck hunter, goose hunter is going to face that quail hunter, pheasant hunter, where they're going to have multiple shot opportunities in the same instance. And it's a lot harder to do. You can rely on muscle memory and you can rely on practice, but the truth is that duck hunters don't shoot enough to have that muscle memory unless you're, a 30-year seasoned vet. But for a new person getting into this, that's where this technology becomes so helpful of getting your confidence as a shotgunner to ethically and responsibly dispatch these animals the way that hunters are supposed to do it, right? And that is huge to me, that a new hunter can come into this space and have that comfort and that consistency and that confidence to say, oh, that's what I'm supposed to be seeing. And I think that quote behind your head right there says it all, is that all of a sudden, it's like the lights are turned on, and that is what we need to give people that, and not just hunting, Mr. Phil, but when we see the sales of guns going up drastically, like they have in the COVID year of 2020, it's happened in other election years, other presidencies where we've seen gun sales and ammo sales go through the roof. These new shooters need to be educated on, here is a way that you can train your body and hone your skill set in on this weapon to become better and more proficient with it, giving you the confidence. And what does that do? That teaches you not to be scared, because being scared of the gun is the first mistake in becoming very unsuccessful with it, right?
Exactly.
And I think that you have to be able to tell people that, hey, with the use of a HIVIZ light pipe technology, it's more than just an aftermarket sight. That's how I've always believed in the product, is that this is what it's teaching me to do to become a more ethical hunter, because I think we owe it to the birds. We also owe it to ourselves as gun owners to be the most ethical and responsible and safest shooter that we possibly can be.
Yes, absolutely. I'd concur with that 100%.
So is that go back to the roots of the company of, this is what HIVIZ is built on, is we want people to understand that their skills can be completely improved by shooting these sites that HIVIZ is producing?
Well, absolutely. You'd mentioned research. A lot of our research was going out, whether it was hunting or just to a range and, testing the product. And we saw right away the benefits that what the site had to offer. And that's why, frankly, we launched, I believe it was June of 1996, but it was a real strong launch, and it didn't take us long to start in pretty serious growth mode. So the product was accepted right away.
And have you seen people alter their habits when it comes to shooting? Once they put it on there, I'm of the belief system that you'd ever take it off. But do you ever think that people go, well, now that the HIVIZ has taught me how to shoot, that I can go back to just being regular now?
Oh no. Once they've gotten the sight, have shot, whether it's hunting or whatever else target. No, they don't go without the sight, whether it's shotgun, handgun. It becomes part of the equipment that they're comfortable with, their confidence, and so forth.
I've seen other companies in the past decade come into the space and kind of use the scope mentality, if you will, of the laser scope or the laser sight for waterfowling. Waterfowling and bird hunting, wing shooting as a whole, is a very traditional sport. Now, I'm not saying that deer hunting and other types aren't, but a lot of people in deer hunting are of the mindset that I just need my rifle and my scope and my blaze orange and I'm going to go deer hunting. That's why there's so many deer hunters. It's not as gear intensive if you don't want it to be. Now, I'm not saying a deer hunter can't go out and just be like, well, I'm going to do archery and muzzleloader and rifle and this and reload and do all my things. You can get into it as much as you want, but in duck hunting, it's been tradition that I don't know if you're ever going to persuade a duck hunter to put a muzzle brake or a silencer on his or her 12 gauge. I don't know if you're ever going to persuade or sell a duck hunter the ideology to put a laser sight, a scope, if you will, on where you got to pull your shotgun up shoulder. And I've seen people try to come into the space and do that. I think a lot of it has to do with the traditional sense of what shotgunning is. And the HIVIZ brand has never disrupted or interrupted that traditional sense. All it's done is enhance it to where now you're still using your shotgunning skills, but you're just training your eye to get on target, stay on target, and transition from target to target in a cleaner, smoother way. Is that fair to say?
Oh, that you said it very well, and I would agree with everything you say 100% there.
Because you can teach an old dog new tricks, but the HIVIZ is more, it's hard for me to explain to people how giddy I get looking down a HIVIZ. I was just looking at some video that we just aired an episode with Chase Outlaw from the PBR. We were hunting in Arkansas, really terrible conditions for the flooded timber. Not one day was foggy, the next day was cloudy and overcast, and he just kept throwing his gun up on his shoulder because he couldn't believe the visibility of our guns compared to what he was used to shooting. So he's like, I'm sold. Like, I need one of these 100%. And then I'm like, well, even in blue sky, sunshine days, it still does the same thing to you. And I love the explanation of that ambient light and being outdoors and how it collects that light. I've never thought of the HIVIZ as a collector of light, but it really is collecting that ambience, that ambient light that you're talking about. And I want to challenge myself to go out and watch how that is actually occurring. I don't know if you can do it. Do you put sunglasses on and watch the difference in your sight? Are there ways that you can practice that of seeing the light get gathered, or is it just happening so quick that our eyes can't get trained for that?
Well, that's a good question. I really don't know exactly how to answer that, but when you talk different backgrounds, different lighting, glasses, I shot with colored glasses, I think rose color, but and again, my preference was the green, but it was I could see in all light conditions there wasn't any situation I can recall I was lacking, not being able to pick up the barrel.
Well, if you think about, if you're not shooting with eye protection, you're really doing yourself a disadvantage. I mean, you're taking something that is so crucial and precious in our life, which is our vision. You're putting it into harm's way if you're not shooting with eye protection on. Even though we've all been there, done that, it's crazy not to use shooting protection in your eyes, your visual, and then your hearing also. But when you do change the lens perspective of your eyes, the lenses that are equipped in our human head, in our human eyes, right? We have lenses in there that magnify, and they nearsightedness and farsightedness. And now you might have prescription glasses, you might have sunglasses. All of of that, the prism technology that Oakley is producing now that I wear on every hunt, when I look down my sight, it gives me the ability to pick that sight up even more. I mean, it gives me, when I have those darker shades on, that sight becomes even more important now. So if you're not using eye protection, you should be. If you're not a prescription shooter and you're wearing your clear lenses and you're wearing a yellow or a rose color, or a lot of the technology that we use with Oakley, which is a little bit darker. I have red, I have different colors. It's crazy to see the difference if you take that sight off and look down it with your sunglasses, as opposed to having that sight on there and now having those sunglasses on. It's night and day difference of getting on that target. There's nobody, and I pride myself in being able to get my shotgun shouldered and getting on the target now, because I don't want to give that bird an ounce of a second to get further away from my patterning, spreading out more, causing maybe a BB to go into its body and hurt or cripple him or her, and have a crippled 800 yards away, and hopefully your dog's good enough to go retrieve it. I want to kill it and dispatch it right now over the decals. So I decoys, Mr. Phil. So I pride myself in getting on target now. When I call the shot, I'm on it now. I want my gun shouldered, and I want my eye on the rib, my cheek down on the butt, and I want to be able to say boom and kill that duck right where I called the shot at. Because as soon as I pull that trigger the first time, what happens? All the other ducks, they scoot back really quick, especially if they're coming into the wind. The wind's at our back, which ducks and geese are going to set into the wind. They're going to just ride that wind and get out of there. So if you're going to take the responsibility of transitioning to your second target, you don't want them to have a chance to get even further away. So being able to find that site is so crucial in the conservation part of what we're doing as guns. And people would hear me and say, "You're crazy. You don't need that." And I'm like, just try it. Ignorance is what is going to void you from being the most successful shotgunner you can be.
I agree totally. And I'm the same way, whether bird hunting or targets. I like the aggressive, getting on your target and dispatching, as you say. And I think many shooters are like that.
Do you think that, and I don't know how much you can talk about what you do with America's military, but if you take that same ideology into war and into theater and into defending our freedoms as a country over here, it's the same mentality. I mean, you have to get on target because now the stakes are high. The stakes are raised a bunch. So you work with the military, you supply sites to military issued weapons. Is it the same mentality there that the military takes in their training efforts of what we're discussing as just a duck hunter in the United States?
Well, I think the short answer is yes. In the case of law enforcement, we do work with them. I think, what we see on a shotgun, the fact that you can get on target quicker, that can save your life. If you're law enforcement or military, any advantage you have to get on target quicker is always a huge plus upside. So, durability, quality, a lot of things go into a product like that, but absolutely it's, a big plus. So.
What can an end consumer expect with their HIVIZ experience? Customer service, quality of product, warranty information, how to maintain that site and provide the right kind of maintenance for it, instructions that come with the sites on how to get the most out of it and capitalize on this experience when you're shooting. They can expect all this. I've seen it for a decade now of how it takes my shooting experience to the next level. And that's what I've never said, hey, I'll outshoot you. I've never said, oh, you're going to be a much better duck hunter with this. I've never said that. I said my experience has been elevated because of everything that the brand HIVIZ encompasses. What can somebody expect? What does the future hold? I don't want to sound like a pun, but the future is bright, right? This is what we need as America, the Second Amendment. We need to teach people to be safer, more responsible gun owners and gun shooters, whether you're a male or a female. I think that that's what the underlying message and branding is of the HIVIZ brand. Would you agree with that? And where do we go from here?
Well, I agree with everything you just said. I know when HIVIZ was founded, going back to the customer service part there that you mentioned, I know when the company was started, we wanted to treat customers just how you want to be treated when you buy a product. And so we've done our best, try to honor that and make sure our customers know that, without them, we wouldn't be here. But where we go from here forward, I'm always glass half full, but I think, there's a bright future in front of us. And, from the company standpoint, we plan to stay, innovative in terms of product and coming out with good stuff, for future. And, the quality issue, we're very much about quality. So, anything you see coming out from HIVIZ will, be built right and will be will be backed 100%, but will be the HIVIZ quality, I guess, what I'm trying to say here.
Well, it's a huge stamp of quality that you guys put on the stuff, and that's never been compromised. That's a big thing when you're talking about shooting. It's a huge part of not pulling the wool over somebody's eyes, and that's what I've always tried to get across, Mr. Phil, is that somebody could look at our relationship with your brand and be like, oh, they're just paying you to say that. You don't need that sight. I've always been to the mindset of, look, you owe it to yourself to be the best and most responsible shooter you can be. We would not be putting these sights on our guns if they did not elevate our consistency and our success and our experience. I promise you that. I was taught about the ethics and morals and principles of hunting at a very young age. I cannot stand to see animals suffer. I cannot stand to see animals disrespected. I don't care if it's a coyote in Laramie, Wyoming, that just ate 9 sheep on a farmer's ranch. I understand predator management, and I understand the evolution and the ecosystem and what predators are put on earth to do. I never disrespect a coyote. They're the most adaptable animal probably on earth. You could probably put one at the North Pole and he'll be alive in a year. He'll find a way to live. So I've always been of the mindset of the animal deserves the utmost respect and compassion. And I would not be shooting a HIVIZ sight if I did not see a difference in the way that I shotgun and was able to ethically dispatch animals without having cripples. And I know that I've always bragged about my system. It's the Benelli with the federal ammo, with the HIVIZ sight, and a Rob Roberts choke tube. And this system does this for me daily on a consistent basis. Now, do I practice? Yes. Do I practice a ton in the off season? No. But I do pattern my guns. I do understand what the pattern is doing, what the choke tube is doing, what the wad is doing. And after all of that is done and it's working properly, now it's about my vision and my skill set of being able to get on target and dispatch it. I would not have a HIVIZ on my gun if it didn't make me a better hunter. My livelihood and the animals not suffering depends on my ability and responsibility of pulling that trigger. And that's what I try to tell people, is that it's not me trying to hard sell you. Either you want to be the best or you don't. And that's what HIVIZ does for me, is it makes me a way better shotgunner and a way better duck hunter.
Well, I know we're doing this show here, but I can tell the audience, when we're not on air, I know you're very much a believer in the HIVIZ, and as you say, our relationship goes way back, and I recall a lot of the conversations that we have had, regarding the product. So I know you're a true believer, and so yeah, It's been good. So
I look forward to many. Oh, I'm sorry. What was that, Mr. Phil?
I'm sorry. You sure it's only a decade? I thought it was back further than that.
It might be 11 years now. I mean, we need to go back and research it, because I remember coming to the Fort Collins property. Maybe it was in 2008. It might be 10 or 12. It might be 12 years now.
It's been a while. So
I love it. You know what sucks is that, I don't know what SHOT Show is going to do, but that's usually when we get to reconvene and hang out a little bit. But we got to make an effort to get together, and I need to come to Wyoming and see the new facility and tour it and see some of the CNCing and the machining going on. And I think that we need to make an effort to get that done here soon.
Absolutely. We'd love to have you.
A nice steak dinner.
Yeah,
we share a very good common friend in Mr. Scott. Served our country as special forces, and I was introduced to him, and he became one of my best friends in filming and traveling and what he's done for our country and our show. And I met him through you when Scott worked for you, and I mean, he is a true American.
He is. I can't say enough good about Scott, and loved it when he was here, but yeah, you're absolutely right. Quite the gentleman, served the country very well.
Yeah, I love being around that guy. You talk about optimism and just a great human being. If you see him up there, is he still living there, or did he move to Texas?
Actually, he's still here. I saw him a couple months ago. We actually went out and did some fishing. So. Oh,
awesome. I'm going to text him right now and say hello. I try to text him once a month, but he's a great dude. He introduced me to several of the military guys that we get to hunt with and associate with. So I'm very honored to know Scott. But I appreciate your time, Mr. Phil. The HIVIZ brand, you can find them exclusively on all of our shotguns at the Fowl Life, and we are not going to quit shooting HIVIZ. You can mark my words on that. I truly appreciate the partnership, Mr. Phil, and I look forward to seeing you soon.
We do as well, and we would look forward to having you and your crew come in and do the tour. So, and thanks for all that you've done over the 10, 12 years.
We'll keep doing it, my man. I look forward to seeing you soon. That's Mr. Phil Howe, the founder of HIVIZ Light Pipe Technology, Laramie, Wyoming. We do not shoot at a duck or a goose or a sporting clay without them on our Benellis. Check them out. You can find them on social media on Instagram at HIVIZ Sites. They are a true innovator and trailblazer in making our shotgunning and hunting experience elevated and that much better. Please check them out. Support the partners and sponsors that support us. Tom, hit that button. This is 2 a.m. Logic. The song is called My Fowl Life. Thank you all for listening to another episode of the Fowl Life podcast, brought to you by our friends at HIVIZ Sites and Light Pipe Technology. Take care. Talk to you soon.